Do you suffer from back pain? Well, this video is for you. G'day team, so this video is targeting anyone that suffers with any type of back pain or back issues. 4 out of 5 people do suffer with some sort of back pain, and this usually is caused from general day-to-day living, whether we're slouched in front of a computer all day, texting on the phone, having dinner, driving the car, slouched down, watching TV. It's just what our bodies are so used to, and the front of our bodies are so flexed in that flexed position so often, and we've got all this pressure in our spine, in our backs. And usually when we do have some type of issues, we go to a massage therapist and we say, oh, my traps are so sore, my lower back's so sore. And the massage therapist usually targets that area. But the analogy I like to use is if we're driving in our car and our car has a problem, the red light will come up. We don't open up the dash and try and turn the red light off. We go to a mechanic and they search the car and find out where the problem is. They fix the problem and the red light turns off. So if you've got lower back issues, that's the red light that flares up, but there's usually a weakness in your body or a tightness in your body. And I'm going to give you some exercises that you can introduce and implement to your lifestyle that will hopefully help with any sort of issues. Okay, so the first muscle that we're going to concentrate on is our hip flexors. Now, our hip flexors is that little muscle that runs straight down to your quads from your midsection. If you can see it there, that line there. That's what we need to loosen up. Like I said before, we're constantly in a flexed position. So your hip flexors are flexed all day, pretty much every day for hours and hours and hours. And we can either stretch that out with certain stretches, but the way I like to explain it, you get a piece of steak and it only stretches so far if you try and pull it apart. But if you beat it and roll it out, it'll stretch right out. So we're gonna use a tennis ball today to loosen these bad boys up. Okay, so as mentioned before, we can stretch the hip flexor. So on your knees, one leg forward, pushing your hips forward and feeling that stretch in front of the hip flexor here. Great stretch, but like I said, a piece of meat will only stretch so far, but if you beat it and roll it out by trigger point, we'll get a lot more out of it. So putting the tennis ball down, lay on the ball and try and get the ball right onto that hip flexor. You should really feel this, it's not going to tickle. And once you're on that pressure point, just roll around and massage. Try and release that tension on that hip flexor as much as possible. We want to do this for about a minute, then change sides and do 2 rounds of this. Try and release that hip flexor as much as possible, and aim to do this a couple of times a week if you can. Like I said, majority of our lifestyle is in that flexed position with all of those movements. So the more we can try and trigger point and release this, the better off you're going to be. Okay, so this part is for anyone that suffers with any sort of upper back pain. So along your traps, along your neck, if you have any pain there, don't go to the massage therapist and say, I need this massage. We need to work out why we've got a tightness somewhere and why we've got a weakness somewhere. And usually the tightness is due to tight pecs. This is everything bringing us in with that day-to-day living. Everything's in here, and our pec minor is usually the cause of this. So again, the piece of steak can only stretch so far. So if we can stretch out that steak, but then also find that pec minor. So the pec minor is just underneath the scap here, and it's that little muscle, that gristly muscle that just sits there. So we can stretch out the pec major and then find that pec minor and self-trigger point it whilst we're in that stretch position. So we can get in and massage those fibers as much as possible and really relieve that pec minor. And it's going to be really tight for a lot of you. This is going to hurt. So we can do a minute each side and do 2 or 3 rounds of this just to really loosen it up. Once you find that a lot looser, there's going to be a lot less strain on those traps in that neck. Now, when it comes to the weakness, it's usually in our rhomboid. So the rhomboid sits right in the middle of the back, and this, once they're strong, it's going to help strengthen that posture and bring you down instead of hunched forward. Those weak rhomboids are just going to make us walk around like this all day. So we can get some high cables and do sets of pull downs, close grip pull downs, or we can get high resistance bands. So when we do this movement, we want to bring it down and then put our mind to the rhomboids in the middle of the back and really squeeze and flex and hold at the bottom of the movement. So we want to do about 3 or 4 reps of this set, and the rep range is usually up around the 10 to 15 rep mark. So nice high, squeeze it down and think about those rhomboids all the way up. Squeeze and hold on the way down. Put that mind to muscle connection straight into the middle of your back. So once we strengthen that, once we loosen these pec minors, you're going to see a huge difference from your neck and upper traps. Okay, so this part is for the majority of us that suffer with any lower back or mid back issues. We need to find out where the tightness is and where the weakness is. Now, usually the tightness is what we played around with first, those hip flexors. So if we can implement that exercise to start off with, we're going to see a big difference there. But we need to loosen up the piriformis muscle and we need to strengthen the glute medius. Now, these two are found around the same area. So if you go into your back, lean forward a little bit, and you find 2 bones that stick out slightly, just on the side, so they're the bones there, just on the side of that, just on the outside a little bit, is where we'll find the tight piriformis that we need to loosen up as much as possible, and that's around the area where the glute medius is. So the glute medius sits underneath the glute maximus, it's underneath there. So to work this muscle, we usually do our squats, deadlifts, our lunges, and it fires up the big muscle groups in the butt. But our glute medius is that movement that makes us adduct out. And it's really hard to activate that with most of our movements. So I'm going to give you some exercises to relieve that piriformis, to loosen that up, and then exercises to strengthen the glute medius. Okay, so exercise number 1 for the glute medius is up against the wall, just resting your arm up against the wall. We want to lift the leg that's closest to the wall and then just slouch out a little bit, just stick your butt out slightly. What we want to do from here is squeeze the glute medius up and push this hip in towards the wall, hold, and then back out. Squeeze, push and hold, and back out. Your arms up against the wall just to simply rest up against there, but we want to activate this glute medius as much as possible. Sorry, we shouldn't slouch down into it. We should control these movements, up and sit back down into it. Up, squeeze, sit back down into it. Up, squeeze as much as possible, sit back down into it. So we're literally just doing this with the hips, pushing that glute med, all of it's rested down here, squeezing it up towards the wall and back down. We want to do about 10 to 15 reps each side, 3 or 4 sets of these. That's really going to target the glute medius. Okay, so this exercise is going to both release the piriformis and work the glute medius. So what we want to do is find that muscle just alongside of that bone, just outside of it. Dig in with your thumb into the piriformis muscle. Then what we want to do is bring our foot up towards the ceiling and squeeze and hold whilst pushing into that muscle. And then back down. Release the leg, but keep that pressure into that piriformis muscle to release it. And go back up. That's number 2. Squeeze and hold. Dig hard. And then come back down. Release that leg, but keep that pressure into that muscle to loosen it up. We want to do about 10 reps here. Squeeze and hold all the way down. Relax. So we want to do 10 reps on that side, 10 reps on that side, 2 or 3 rounds. This is an important exercise really to loosen up that muscle. and work those glute medius. Once you do this, you're going to find there's a lot of released tension into that lower and mid back. Hopefully these exercises help you. Give it a shot. So hopefully these exercises help you if you do have any sort of back injuries or back issues. If you do have any severe issues, I would highly recommend to please see a specialist that specializes in back issues, whether it be a chiropractor or a sports physiotherapist. If you do have any severe issues, please don't hesitate. Your back is very important. If you do get any bad back problems, like I've had a slip disc when I was younger and I was told I was never be able to play rugby league ever again, but I did my exercises, I did my research and I got on top of it, and now approaching 40 fast, I'm still doing backflips and carrying on like a pork chop. So I'm very passionate about protecting my back and my lower back issues that flare up every now and then, but whenever I'm on top of these exercises, it certainly helps me through it. So if you do have any severe issues, please go see a specialist. But if you've got any minor issues, please implement these and see how you feel. Let me know how you go, and hopefully this helps. Cheers.